Welcome to Podcast Summaries, where every week we break down powerful ideas from 8 to 10 top podcasts to help you grow, heal, and thrive while saving time. If you find this summary helpful, please subscribe and check out links for more content. Your support keeps this journey going. Here is a summarized version of Novak Djokovic reveals his secret mindset shift that ends self-doubt, featuring Novak Djokovic by Jay Shetty. Jay Shetty asks Novak Djokovic about his mindset when he loses. Novak Djokovic reveals that he just wants to be left alone. He doesn't want to talk to anyone or be around anyone. He just wants to process his emotions and be by himself. Novak Djokovic shares that it's taken a consistent practice of prayer, work, mindfulness, meditation, and conscious breathing to become the person he is today. He emphasizes that it requires more responsibility from him on a daily basis to prepare himself for the biggest battles, both internally and externally. Jay Shetty asks Novak Djokovic when he first became aware of the feeling of not being enough. Novak Djokovic gets emotional as he shares that it's still deep inside of him. He reveals that it goes back to his relationship with his father and not feeling good enough. Novak Djokovic talks about how he's achieved everything he set out to as a tennis player, but he still wants to do more. He wants to keep going, because he feels like he's still spreading light by playing tennis and inspiring younger generations. However, he also acknowledges that he has a feeling of not being enough, which comes from a less good place. Novak Djokovic shares that he's curious about how far he can go, and how long he can push his own limits. He believes that the limits are normally constructs in our mind, and he's inspired by people like Brian Johnson who have dedicated their lives to understanding what are the best conditions for the longest living life. Novak Djokovic emphasizes the importance of environment in supporting our daily habits and choices. He believes that it's super important to have a supportive community, even if it's just one person, because making tough choices can be challenging when society is not aligned with our goals. He feels like it's reinventing himself constantly, and he's grateful for the great foundation he had and the incredible things he's achieved. Jay Shetty asks Novak Djokovic about his experience with self-doubt and how he has learned to live with it. Djokovic shares that he has always felt a sense of not being enough, stemming from his childhood and his relationship with his father. He explains that his father's high expectations and the pressure to succeed were overwhelming at times, but he has learned to use this feeling as a motivating factor to push himself to achieve his goals. Djokovic's journey with self-doubt began when he was a young boy, growing up in a war-torn Serbia with limited resources. His father's struggles to provide for their family and his own desire to succeed created a sense of responsibility and pressure that he carried with him throughout his career. Despite his many accomplishments, Djokovic still struggles with feelings of inadequacy, but he has learned to acknowledge and accept them as a natural part of his journey. Djokovic credits his faith and spiritual practices with helping him to stay grounded and focused, even in the face of adversity. He believes that there is a higher power at work in his life, guiding him and helping him to achieve his goals. He shares that he has developed a daily practice that includes prayer, mindfulness, meditation, and visualization, which helps him to stay connected to this higher power and to cultivate a sense of inner peace. Jay Shetty asks Djokovic about his point of connection with this higher power and how he stays connected, especially in difficult times. Djokovic explains that it's a consistent practice that involves a combination of different techniques, including prayer, mindfulness, and meditation. He emphasizes the importance of finding what works for each individual and making it a part of their daily routine. He believes that it's essential to acknowledge and accept negative thoughts and emotions, rather than trying to suppress them. He shares a story about a Zen Buddhism teacher who told him that it's not about not having negative thoughts, but about not staying in that state for too long. He finds that walking in nature, especially uphill, helps him to feel more present and connected to himself and the world around him. He believes that this practice is often underestimated, but it's a powerful tool for cultivating inner peace and clarity. Jay Shetty reflects on Djokovic's unique experience as an athlete, dealing with extremes of success and failure, and how his toolkit for managing his mind is one of the most versatile. Djokovic shares that it's a completely different feeling now, and he has a different perspective. He recalls looking up to his idols, such as Pete Sampras, and feeling surreal when he shared the court with them. However, he also felt a strong desire to beat them and become the best. Djokovic reveals that he went through a transformative journey, both physically and mentally, to reach the top. He changed his nutrition, eliminating gluten, dairy, and refined sugar, which greatly improved his mental clarity, recovery, and decision-making on the court. He also worked on his mental programs, overcoming negative thoughts and emotions that held him back. Djokovic shares that he's grateful for the rivalries he had with Federer, Nadal, and Murray, which shaped him into the person and player he is today. He's now in a new phase of his career, where he's playing against younger players, and he's trying to embrace this new journey. He feels a sense of responsibility to share his experience and knowledge with the new generation of tennis players. Jay Shetty asks Djokovic how he finds the younger players in terms of their openness to coaching and guidance. Djokovic agrees with Carmelo Anthony's observation that younger players can be less open to guidance, but he believes that there are still many young players who are curious and willing to learn. He shares that he's had some young players approach him for advice, and he's happy to share his experience and knowledge with them. Djokovic emphasizes the importance of respect, appreciation, and empathy in sports. He believes that competitors can be human beings and show respect and kindness to each other, even in the midst of fierce competition. He shares that he's been through many injuries and losses throughout his career, and he's learned to appreciate the value of solitude and self-reflection. Jay Shetty asks Djokovic how he deals with losing a match now, compared to earlier in his career. Djokovic shares that it's still hard for him to digest a loss, and he needs time to isolate himself and process his emotions. He believes that solitude is not necessarily bad, and that it's essential to create time for oneself to reflect and recharge. He also shares that being bored can be good, as it allows us to tap into our creativity and imagination. Jay Shetty asks Novak Djokovic about his approach to dealing with boredom and distractions. Novak Djokovic shares that he believes it's essential to learn how to be with your thoughts, and not instantly reach for a book or screen when feeling bored. He suggests going outdoors, sitting in nature, and allowing yourself to be present with your thoughts. He also mentions that he wants his children to develop this skill, especially at a young age, to help them connect with nature and themselves. Novak Djokovic reveals that he struggles with this himself, particularly after losing a match. He wants to distract himself with his phone or watch something, but he knows this is a bad habit. Instead, he tries to go outside, leave his phone behind, and immerse himself in nature. He finds that this helps him calm down and regain control over his emotions. Jay Shetty reflects on how this approach can help disrupt negative patterns and prevent getting caught up in a spiral of negative thoughts. Novak Djokovic agrees, sharing that he uses distractions to bring himself back to a centered state, allowing him to then engage in other practices like breathing or socializing. The conversation turns to the topic of emotional regulation and how athletes often struggle with this. Novak Djokovic shares that he used to believe that showing emotions was a sign of weakness, but he's since changed his perspective. He now sees the value in being vulnerable and expressing his emotions, even if it means crying after a tough loss. Jay Shetty praises athletes like Cristiano Ronaldo, who are unafraid to show their emotions, even in the face of criticism. Novak Djokovic agrees, sharing that he's also cried after losses, particularly when playing for his country. He believes that it's essential to acknowledge and respect the emotional investment that athletes put into their sport. The conversation then shifts to the topic of sports and their impact on society. Novak Djokovic shares that he believes sports have the power to connect people and provide a sense of community. He notes that fans often relate to athletes because they see themselves in the struggles and triumphs that athletes experience on the field. Jay Shetty reflects on how sports can teach valuable lessons like discipline, teamwork, and perseverance. Novak Djokovic agrees, sharing that sports have taught him the importance of never giving up and believing in himself. He also notes that sports can be a powerful tool for personal growth and development. He reveals that he cried for days after the surgery, feeling like he had let himself down. However, he was able to come back stronger and continue his successful career. Jay Shetty asks Novak Djokovic about the scrutiny he faces in his career, wondering if it's worse than an injury. Novak Djokovic responds by saying that injury is the biggest enemy of an athlete, but a hostile environment can also be challenging. However, he's learned to thrive in such environments, using them as fuel to prove people wrong. Novak Djokovic shares a story about how he used to convince himself that the crowd was cheering for him, even when they were actually cheering for his opponent. He'd repeat the phrase, "Novak, Novak to himself, creating his own reality, and using it as motivation. Jay Shetty is impressed by this mental trick, and Novak Djokovic explains that it's possible to train your subconscious mind to believe what you want it to. Novak Djokovic emphasizes the importance of self-care and discipline, and how it's essential to take responsibility for your own life. He talks about the law of attraction and how your thoughts can shape your reality. He also mentions his new supplement brand, Sela, which focuses on hydration and wellness. He's passionate about helping people understand the importance of hydration and providing them with high-quality products. Novak Djokovic shares his vision for Sela, which includes a range of products that can help people improve their performance and overall well-being. He's excited to embark on this new journey and hopes that people will respond positively to his brand. He also mentions another project he's working on called Regenesis Pod, which is a multi-sensory device that can help people recharge and refresh themselves in a short amount of time. Jay Shetty asked Novak Djokovic about the best advice he's ever received. Novak Djokovic shares that the best advice he's ever received is to live in the present moment, learn from the past, and work for the future. He emphasizes the importance of being mindful and focused on the present, rather than getting caught up in regrets about the past or worries about the future. Novak Djokovic then shares the worst advice he's ever received, which is to do 10 times worse to someone who has wronged you. He notes that this advice is not only unhelpful but also harmful, as it can lead to a cycle of revenge and negativity. Instead, he suggests that a better approach would be to do 10 times less to someone who has wronged you, and to focus on forgiveness and moving forward. Jay Shetty asks Novak Djokovic about his relationship with his wife Yelena and how she has supported him throughout his career. Novak Djokovic speaks glowingly of his wife, describing her as his rock and his partner in every sense of the word. He notes that she has been instrumental in helping him to stay grounded and focused, and that she has been a constant source of support and encouragement throughout his career. Novak Djokovic also shares his worst day on court, which was when he lost to Juan Martín del Potro in the first round of the Olympics in Rio de Janeiro. He notes that this was a particularly tough loss, as he had been feeling confident and was on a hot streak at the time. However, he also notes that this loss taught him a valuable lesson about perseverance and resilience, and that it ultimately made him a stronger player. Jay Shetty asks Novak Djokovic about his toughest opponent mentally and physically. Novak Djokovic notes that his toughest opponent mentally is himself, as he often struggles with self-doubt and pressure to perform. However, he also notes that his toughest opponent physically is Rafael Nadal, with whom he has had many epic battles on the court. He describes their matches as being like a dance, with both players pushing each other to new heights and creating something truly special. Finally, Jay Shetty asks Novak Djokovic about what law he would create if he could create one law that everyone in the world had to follow. Novak Djokovic notes that he would create a law that requires people to be kind and compassionate towards one another and to take care of the planet. He suggests that if people were more empathetic and understanding towards one another, the world would be a much better place. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe, check out YouTube channel, and just remember, subscription is only £1 or $1 per month. Leave a comment or review. Until next time, happy listening!